Maria Sullivan parked her old 1998 Ford pickup truck in front of the Whole Foods supermarket, the engine coughing before finally falling silent. The faded blue paint and dented bodywork contrasted brutally with the gleaming SUVs and luxury sedans that filled the parking lot. She got out of the vehicle wearing her worn work boots, faded jeans, and a simple fire department t-shirt that had seen better days. At 43, Maria still had the strong body of someone who had spent decades carrying heavy equipment and climbing burning ladders, but her clothes reflected nothing more than pure functionality. As Maria pushed her shopping cart through the brightly lit aisles, she felt the stares. It was nothing new. In that prosperous part of Connecticut, where houses cost millions and imported cars were the norm, she always stood out as a discordant note. A well-dressed woman, carrying a purse that probably cost more than Maria's car, pushed her daughter aside as they passed each other in the organic produce section. The gesture was subtle but unmistakable. Maria simply picked up her apples and continued on. She had learned long ago that other people's opinions didn't pay the bills or save lives. For 22 years, she served in the Millbrook Fire Department, a small station serving 3 rural communities on the outskirts of town. She started as one of the few women in a male-dominated world, facing skepticism and malicious comments. She proved her worth in every fire, every rescue, every night shift. She rose through the ranks slowly, not through favors, but through raw competence and unwavering courage. But few knew the true story of Maria Sullivan. Few knew that this unassuming woman, who drove a vehicle that looked like it was about to fall apart, had more money than most of the inhabitants of that town would see in their entire life. When Maria was 25, her grandmother passed away, leaving her a substantial inheritance. The family matriarch had wisely invested in stocks and real estate for decades, accumulating a quiet fortune while living in a modest house and driving used cars. The lesson she taught Maria was simple. Money wasn't for showing off. It was for security and purpose. Maria honored this philosophy with every fiber of her being. The inheritance was carefully invested. Maria consulted discreet financial advisors, diversified her investment, and never touched the principal. Dividends and income grew over the years, transforming the initial inheritance into a sum that would guarantee comfort for several generations. But Maria continued living in her small 2-bedroom house, driving used vehicles and wearing clothes until they literally wore out. What nobody knew was that Maria channeled a large portion of that money to the fire station where she worked. When the department needed new self-contained breathing apparatus, but the municipal budget didn't cover it, an anonymous donation appeared. When the station's roof began to leak and there were no funds for repairs, an unmarked check arrived in the mail. When young recruits couldn't afford the advanced training courses required for their certifications, mysterious scholarships. For years, Captain Thomas Brennan and the other veterans at the station speculated about the anonymous benefactor. Some thought it was a wealthy city businessman who had been rescued from a fire decades earlier. Others imagined it was a national organization supporting firefighters. No one ever suspected Maria, the quiet woman who arrived for her shift in a noisy car, bringing lunches packed in reusable containers. In the Whole Foods checkout line, Maria placed her groceries on the conveyor belt. Behind her, 2 women were talking loudly enough for her to hear every word. One of them was wearing expensive yoga clothes and had that perfect fake tan that screamed spinning classes and spa treatment. "I don't understand why people like that come shopping here," said the first woman, clearly referring to Maria. "I mean, look at her. She probably can't even afford half of what's in her cart. Maybe she's using government discount coupons?" the other replied, chuckling softly. "Or perhaps her credit card is maxed out and she doesn't even know it yet." Maria continued placing her items on the conveyor belt, her face remaining completely. The cashier, a tired-looking young man named Derek, avoided making eye contact with either of them. He had seen this type of behavior before and clearly felt uncomfortable. When it came time to pay, Maria swiped her standard debit card. The transaction was approved instantly. As always, she picked up her bags and left, still hearing the women behind her commenting on how some people have no sense of place in the parking lot. While loading groceries into the back of her pickup truck, Maria saw a scene unfolding a few cars ahead. An older woman was struggling to change a flat tire, her hands trembling as she tried to loosen the lug nuts. She wore elegant clothes and expensive jewelry, but clearly had no idea what to do with the tool in her hand. Maria approached without hesitation. "Can I help you with that?" The woman looked up, her eyes quickly scanning Maria's appearance. Her initial expression was one of relief, followed by a brief hesitation, as if she were assessing whether she should trust this stranger in worn clothes. But desperation won out. "Would you know how to do this? My husband always takes care of these things, and I haven't the slightest idea. I've worked in worse situations," Maria replied, already crouching beside the vehicle. Her calloused hands did the work quickly, loosening the nuts that the older woman hadn't been able to move. She positioned the jack, lifted the car, and changed the tire in less than 10 minutes, a process that would have led the other woman to hours of frustration. "Oh my God, thank you so much," said the woman, genuinely grateful. She opened her purse. "Let me at least give you something for your help." "No need." Maria wiped her hands on her already stained jeans. "Just help someone when you have the chance." As she drove back home, Maria reflected on how people made snap judgments based on superficial appearances. She could easily buy a new car, wear designer clothes, and live in a mansion. But every dollar spent on ostentation was a dollar that wasn't serving a real purpose. And Maria had learned from her grandmother that purpose was infinitely more valuable than The next day, Maria was at the station for her shift when Captain Brennan called her into his office. He looked troubled, running a hand through his gray hair in a gesture she recognized as deep concern. "We have a serious problem," he began, indicating the chair in front of his desk. "The city cut our budget by 30%. 30%, Maria. They say they need to reallocate funds to a new community center and road improvements in wealthy neighborhoods." Maria sat down, maintaining a carefully neutral expression. "What does this mean for us?" "It means we're going to have to lay off 3 firefighters. We're going to have to postpone replacing 2 of our oldest trucks, those that should have been retired 2 years ago. It means we're going to operate with inadequate equipment and insufficient personnel in an area that's already growing and needs more coverage, not less." The captain seemed defeated, something Maria rarely saw in the man who had led the station with quiet strength for 15 years. "I tried to fight this in the city council, but the wealthy people in town have more influence. They don't want higher taxes, and they don't see the fire station as a priority because it's outside the main city limits." Maria processed the information in silence. She knew the 3 firefighters who would likely lose their jobs. Jake Morrison, a father of 2 who had joined the department 5 years ago after serving in the Marine Corps. Rachel Chun, one of the best paramedics Maria had ever seen in action, capable of remaining calm in situations that would make others free. And David Rodriguez, a 24-year-old who had lost his home in a fire as a child and dedicated his life to ensuring that others did not suffer the same fate. "When does this take effect?" Maria asked. "1st of next month, 3 weeks from now." Maria nodded, stood up, and returned to her tasks, but her mind was already working, calculating numbers and planning moves. That night, in her modest home, she made calls to her financial advisor and her lawyer. Instructions were given, documents were prepared, and transfers were initiated. 2 days later, Captain Brennan received a registered letter. Inside was a check from a foundation he'd never heard of, along with a typed note explaining that the donation was specifically intended to cover the budget deficit and ensure no firefighter laid off. The amount was exactly to the cent to cover the 30% cut for the entire fiscal year, with additional funds to begin replacing the oldest trucks. The captain was stunned. He tried to research the foundation, but found only minimal information. A registered organization that supported emergency services in rural areas. He shared the news with the team, and the station erupted in celebration. Jake hugged Rachel, who had tears in her eyes. David remained silent, clearly too emotional to speak. Maria observed everything from a corner, a small smile playing on her lips. No one gave her a second glance. Why would they? She was just Maria, the quiet veteran who was always there but never drew attention to herself. In the following week, more changes began to occur. New equipment arrived. Equipment the station had requested years ago but never received. Updated communication systems, state-of-the-art rescue tools, protective clothing made with materials that offered better protection against extreme heat. Each item arrived with the same discreet note from the same mysterious foundation. It was during this period that the fire that would change everything occurred. A mansion in the hills, one of the most expensive properties in the region, caught fire one autumn afternoon. The call came during Maria's shift, and the entire station responded. The flames were already consuming the second floor when they arrived, tongues of orange and red fire licking the elegant windows and climbing up the white columns that adorned the entrance. The owner, a Wall Street executive named Richard Pemberton, was outside in a panic. "My wife is still inside? She was in the office on the second floor and couldn't get out. Please, you need to save her." Maria didn't hesitate. She got equipped, put on her breathing apparatus, and went in through the front door along with Jake and Rachel. The heat was intense, even through the protective clothing. The smoke was thick and black, reducing visibility to almost nothing, but Maria had navigated worse hells. She moved purposefully, her flashlight cutting through the darkness as she screamed, trying to locate the trapped woman. The office was at the end of a corridor on the second floor. The stairs were partially blocked by burning debris, but Maria found a way. She found Catherine Pemberton unconscious on the floor, overcome by smoke inhalation. Maria lifted her, placing the lifeless body on her shoulders in a fireman's load, and began the descent back down. A beam collapsed above them, sending a shower of embers and burning wood into the air. Maria shielded the woman with her own body, feeling the impact against her back and helmet. She kept moving, each step deliberate and controlled, even as her muscles screamed with effort. Rachel appeared to help, and together they pulled Catherine from the burning house moments before a section of the ceiling collapsed exactly where they had been standing. The paramedics took over, immediately putting Catherine on oxygen and checking her vital signs. Maria removed her helmet, her face covered in soot and sweat, and watched as they worked. Catherine began to cough, her eyes opening. She would live. Richard Pemberton was inconsolable with gratitude. He tried to embrace Maria, but she gently stepped back, still wearing her warm, heavy equipment. "Just doing my job, sir. You saved my wife's life. You're a hero. How can I thank you? Please, there must be something I can do." "Nothing is needed," Maria replied, already turning to help her team fight the remaining flame. But Richard Pemberton wasn't the type of man to take no for an answer. In the following days, he began to investigate, determined to properly reward the firefighters who had saved his wife. He found out about the recent budget cuts and how the station had struggled. He learned about the mysterious foundation that had appeared to save them. And, being a man of resources and connections, he began to hoarse from inhaling smoke. "You were the one who carried me out." Maria nodded. "I'm here with Rachel. It was a team effort. I need to know your name." "Mary Sullivan." Richard was watching his wife, noticing something in her expression that intrigued him. Catherine was studying Maria intently, as if trying to solve a puzzle. Then her eyes widened. "Sullivan. Maria Sullivan. Are you Dorothy Sullivan's granddaughter?" Maria remained very quiet. Few people made that connection. Her grandmother had kept a low profile, known only in certain circles. "Yes," Maria finally replied. "She was my grandmother." Catherine turned to her husband, speaking quickly. "Richard, Dorothy Sullivan was one of the smartest investors of her generation. She was on some of the same charitable boards as my mother. She was known for her quiet philanthropy, always donating anonymously, always avoiding publicity. If this is her granddaughter, ... Richard looked from Catherine to Maria, pieces falling into place. In his mind, he was a wealthy man whose business was built on understanding money and tracking funds, the foundation that saved this station. "Did you investigate where the money came from?" "We investigated just enough to verify that it was legitimate and legal. We never asked beyond that because we didn't want to risk offending the donor." Richard's eyes fixed on Maria. He had superficially investigated the foundation and noticed certain structures that were consistent with high-income estate planning, the kind of thing someone with substantial wealth would set up for philanthropic purposes while maintaining anonymity. "It's you," he said, not as a question, but as a statement of fact. "You've been the anonymous donor all along." The silence that fell over the station was deafening. All eyes turned to Maria. Captain Brennan looked completely shocked. Jake's mouth was agape. Rachel covered her mouth with her hand. Maria maintained her composure, although inwardly she knew that her carefully guarded secret had been exposed. "I prefer not to discuss my personal finances." "My God," Captain Brennan whispered. "All this time, the equipment, the training bags, the repairs, the upgrades, years and years of donations. Was it all you?" Maria didn't answer directly, but her silence was answer enough. She could see the minds working, going over each instance of mysterious help, each piece of equipment that appeared exactly when needed, each financial crisis that was miraculously averted. "Why?" Rachel asked, tears streaming down her face. "Why didn't you ever say anything? Why did you let us all think you were just living paycheck to paycheck like the rest of us?" Maria finally spoke, her voice calm and measured. "Because it wasn't about me. It was never about me. It was about ensuring this station could do its job, that you all had the equipment and support you needed to save lives and get home safely to your families every night. If I had revealed it, it would have changed everything. You would have treated me differently. It would have created awkwardness and distance. I just wanted to be part of the team." "You drive that old truck," Jake said, still processing everything. "You wear boots with holes in them. I've seen you sewing your own clothes instead of buying new ones. Hell, you bring leftovers home for lunch most days. And is there anything wrong with that?" Maria asked softly. "My truck works. My boots still serve their purpose. Home-cooked food is better than fast food. I see no reason to spend money on things I don't need when it can be used for things that really matter." Richard Pemberton was shaking his head in admiration. "You understand something that most rich people never learn. Wealth isn't about what you show. It's about what you can do. It's about freedom and purpose, not about status and appearance." Captain Brennan approached Maria, extending his hand. When she took it, he pulled her into a tight hug. "You've saved this station more times than I can count. You've saved careers, including mine. You've saved lives not only in the fires, but by giving us the tools to do our jobs right." One by one, other team members approached. Some hugged her, others simply placed a hand on her shoulder. There were tears, laughter, and a sense of admiration that permeated the air. Maria, uncomfortable with the attention but also touched by the genuine reaction, let it happen. Catherine Pemberton observed with her own growing understanding at the supermarket. "I bet you hear comments all the time, people judging you by how you dress, by the car you drive." "I've always heard them," Maria admitted, "but their opinions don't pay my rent or save lives. So I never really cared, but you could as least silence them all. You could show off your wealth and force them to eat their word." Maria shook her head. "Then I would be living for their validation, defining my worth by their opinion. My grandmother taught me that the freest person in the world is the one who doesn't need anyone's approval. I know who I am. I know what I've built, what I've accomplished, the good I've done. The opinion of strangers in a parking lot doesn't change any of those realities." Richard was silent for a moment, then spoke. "There is something I can do. I know people in the city government, on the council. I will ensure that this station's budgets are properly funded from now on. You shouldn't have to use your own money to cover what the city should be providing." "I appreciate that," Maria said, "but I have to insist on one condition. Whatever you do, do it for all fire stations in underserved areas, not just this one. There are departments across the country operating with outdated equipment, low salaries, and no support. If you're going to use your influence, use it to help the entire system, not just the place where I work." Richard smiled. "You really are your grandmother's granddaughter," Dorothy always thought. Systemically, always looking for ways to create sustainable change instead of just fixing individual problems. In the weeks that followed, life at the station changed and remained the same. The team now knew about Maria's wealth, but she still showed up for her shifts in the same old truck, still wore the same practical clothes, still brought her lunchboxes. The difference was that now, when she offered to pay for everyone's coffee or bought pizza for the team after a tough shift, everyone understood it was a genuine gesture of generosity, not someone stretching their finances to do something nice for their coworker. What changed most dramatically was the outside perception. The story leaked, as stories inevitably leak in small communities. At the news that the unassuming-looking firefighter was actually a multi-millionaire heiress who had been secretly funding the station for years spread like wildfire. Local newspapers wanted interviews. Television news stations showed up. Maria refused them all, but she couldn't avoid the reactions of the people in town. The same women who had made comments at Whole Foods saw her on the street one day and tried to greet her warmly, as if they were old friends. Maria greeted them politely and continued on her way. She saw no need to confront them or make them feel bad. Their opinions didn't matter any more now than they had before. There was a city council meeting where Captain Brennan spoke publicly about Maria's contributions. Not just financially, but her 2 decades of service, her bravery, and the countless lives she saved. The council chamber was full. Maria sat in the back, wishing all the attention would pass, but also understanding that Brennan was doing this to highlight the broader needs of emergency services. A board member, a man named Thornton who had voted for the budget cut, stood up. "Dr. Sullivan," he began, using a title she technically held from her investments in various corporations that required board seats. "Just Maria," she corrected him. "Maria, then. I must admit I feel ashamed. We have a heroine living among us, someone who has served this community with distinction for over 2 decades. And not only have we failed to recognize her properly, but we have cut funding for the service to which she has dedicated her life. You could have exposed our ingratitude at any time, but you chose to simply resolve the issue quietly with your own resources." "I wasn't doing it for recognition," Maria replied. "I was doing it because it was necessary." "That's the lesson," Thornton continued. "We make assumptions about people based on superficial appearances. We see someone driving an old car and assume they can't contribute, that they're somehow less important to the community. Meanwhile, the person we're looking down on is quietly ensuring vital services continue to function. It's a lesson in humility that we all need." The council voted unanimously to restore full funding to emergency services and establish a committee to ensure that adequate endowments were maintained thereafter. Richard Pemberton did his part, using his connections to arrange additional funding through public-private partnerships. Other wealthy members of the community, embarrassed by the revelation that they had been quietly outdone in generosity by someone they considered lesser, began their own contributions. Maria observed all of this with mixed feeling. She was happy that the outcome was positive, that the emergency services would receive the support they deserved, but she also felt a certain regret at the loss of her anonymity. There was something valuable in being able to move through the world without the complications that known wealth brought. One day, months after the revelation, Maria was in her home workshop, working on her truck. She could afford to pay someone to do the maintenance, but she always enjoyed working with her hands, understanding how things worked. There was a meditative satisfaction in changing the oil, replacing filters, adjusting engine components. Rachel appeared, parking her own modest car in the driveway. She had become one of Maria's closest friends since the revelation, one of the few people who seemed to instinctively understand why Maria lived the way she did. "Still working on that junkyard?" Rachel joked, leaning over the open engine. "It still works, doesn't it?" Maria replied, wiping grease from her hands with an old rag. "You know, everyone at the station has been betting on when you're finally going to buy a new car. Jake says 6 months. The captain says never. I bet never too, so don't disappoint me." Maria laughed. "When this one breaks down, maybe I'll get another used car. Something reliable, but not extravagant. I never saw the point in wasting money on new cars when they lose value the moment you drive out of the parking lot. Most rich people don't think like that. Most wealthy people weren't raised by Dorothy Sullivan. She had a saying, impressing people you don't know with things you don't need using money you should be investing is the definition of a fool." Rachel sat in the driveway, watching Maria work. "Do you think this has changed things? That everyone knows now?" "It has changed and it hasn't changed." Maria considered the question while checking the transmission fluid level. "People treat me a little differently now, more carefully, perhaps more respectfully, but the real team, you who know me, still see me as you always have. It's just that now there's additional context. Jake told me he can no longer imagine you living in a mansion, even though he knows you could buy the biggest house in town without a second thought, because I wouldn't fit in there," Maria said simply. "That life, those huge houses and flashy cars and expensive clothes, That's not who I am. It never was. I'm happier in my small house with my workshop and my garden, going to work every day doing something that matters, knowing that my wealth is doing real good in the world instead of just making me look important. You saved my job, Rachel said quietly. When the cuts were announced, I panicked. I'm my family's sole breadwinner now. My mother is ill and needs constant care. Losing this job would have been devastating. And then that miraculous donation came along, and I was spared. Knowing now that it was you, that you were watching over us and making sure we were protected, is one of the most incredible things anyone has ever done for me. You're an exceptional firefighter and an even better paramedic, Maria replied. This community needs you. I just made sure you could continue doing the work you do so well. Rachel wiped tears from her eyes. You're amazing. You know that? I'm not. I was just lucky enough to have resources, and I chose to use them in a way that made a difference. Anyone in my position should do the same, but most people don't. That's why you're special. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the garage. Maria looked at her old, trusty truck, her modest house in the background, her friend sitting in the doorway wearing clothes as practical and worn as her own. This was her world, her place, her life, and no amount of money would make her give it up for something more flashy but less genuine. Maria Sullivan learned from her grandmother that true wealth wasn't about what you possessed, but about who you were and what you chose to do with the resources you had. She learned that character isn't built in moments of comfort, but in how you respond when you see need, in how you act when no one is watching, in how you treat people regardless of what they can do for you in return. The people who ridiculed her for her modest appearance never truly knew her. They saw surfaces and made judgments, never realizing that the woman they looked down on possessed more integrity in her little finger than many of them would accumulate in lifetimes of seeking status and external validation. And in the end, when the truth was revealed, Maria felt no vindication or satisfaction in proving them wrong. She simply continued living as she always had, true to the values her grandmother instilled in her, serving her community, quietly supporting its causes, and finding richness not in material possessions, but in purpose, genuine relationships, and the quiet satisfaction of making a real difference in the world. The story of Maria Sullivan has become something of a legend in the small Connecticut community, a reminder that heroism comes in many forms, and that the most valuable people among us are often those who work quietly behind the scenes, not seeking glory or recognition, but simply they are doing what needs to be done because it's right, because it matters, because they can.